Welcome to this presentation on increasing VR capacity to improve student and youth outcomes, contributions and impact of the Vocational Rehabilitation Youth Technical Assistance Center. I'm Mindy Larson, the Y-TAC Project Director at the Institute for Educational Leadership, and here with me today are Dr. Kim Osmani, Y-TAC State Technical Assistance Liaison from Cornell University, and Dr. Scott Solberg, Y-TAC Evaluation Director at Boston University. The VR Youth Technical Assistance Center, or Y-TAC as we refer to it, is a partnership led by the Institute for Educational Leadership with partners Cornell University's Yang Institute on Employment and Disability and Boston University School of Education. IEL is a national nonprofit that partners with under-resourced communities to equip leaders to better prepare children, youth, adults, and families for post-secondary education and training, rewarding careers, and civic and community engagement. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about the purpose of Y-TAC. Y-TAC's primary goal is to increase VR agencies' capacity to serve underserved students and youth with disabilities, and their capacity to assist these students and youth to engage in post-secondary education and training, to ensure that they can attain post-secondary skills and credentials, and to obtain competitive and integrated employment. Y-TAC has a particular focus on ensuring that VR agencies are meeting the needs of opportunity youth, a term used to refer to those young people who are not in school or employed, as well as young people who are involved with different service systems, including youth engaged with the juvenile justice system, youth who have been served by the child welfare system, and homeless and runaway youth. Y-TAC also has a specialized focus on improving services to youth who are blind or visually impaired. The objectives of Y-TAC include assisting the VR agencies and their partners to build their capacity to implement several key practices. Practices we've been working with VR agencies to increase capacity around include identifying youth needs and creating meaningful individualized plans for employment, helping agencies to develop and sustain partnerships with other state and local agencies, service providers, and other entities that are engaging in serving youth, adopting outreach policies and procedures that will increase access to services and the engagement of underserved youth. Y-TAC is also assisting VR agencies to strengthen their collaboration and coordination of services to increase competitive integrated employment among youth. This includes strategies such as career exploration and preparation, ensuring that young people receive hands-on work experiences, implementing customized and subordinated employment, and using peer mentoring strategies. Y-TAC's approach to assisting VR agencies really focuses in on ensuring that the professionals and agency leaders are prepared to implement practices that are most effective for engaging and supporting youth to achieve their employment goals. We also focus on promoting innovation among VR agencies by including the youth and students with disabilities in the conversation and training activities. We found that providing input from young people directly helps to spur agency innovation. And finally, Y-TAC's approach has been to work with VR agencies and professionals on mobilizing their efforts to increase collaboration and build partnerships, both to increase and strengthen their services. All of this helps to improve youth access to services, youth retention in services, and the outcomes that youth achieve through VR services. Y-TAC provides a variety of technical assistance. Three categories of TA include intensive, targeted, and universal. I'm going to briefly highlight some of the activities from each of these categories. Y-TAC's been working with 18 states that receive intensive technical assistance. Many of the states that we work with have received training to build youth service competencies. 12 states have received a variety of training, 8 of which have specifically received training we call the Youth Service Professionals Knowledge, Skills, and Abilities training modules. Youth Service Professionals' Knowledge, Skills, and Abilities, or YSPKSAs as we refer to it, are key competencies that adult service providers need to work directly with youth successfully. Y-TAC has been offering 9 interactive day-long training sessions to VR agencies and their partners to equip them in successfully serving and supporting transition-age youth to reach employment goals. For example, Y-TAC delivered 5 of the training modules for staff and partners of the Virginia Department for the Blind and Vision Impaired to build staff competencies for preparing youth for the workforce. These trainings were attended by VR agency professionals and employment service organizations. The results of the evaluation that Y-TAC conducted on these trainings identified numerous ways that the DBVI staff and service providers were applying the practices, as well as additional professional development needs. Based on these findings, DBVI requested follow-up training from Y-TAC on supporting youth with mental health conditions and youth who are blind and vision impaired. Y-TAC's technical assistance work also includes collaboration with the Y-TAC and N-TAC to provide customized employment implementation support. For example, Y-TAC has worked with Oklahoma on assessing gaps in their existing implementation of customized employment. Together, the youth-focused TA centers have developed a systems readiness protocol, which Oklahoma is using to determine how to strengthen their implementation. Another area of intensive technical assistance is focused on peer mentoring strategies. In 2019, Missouri's VR agency was working on developing their first peer mentoring programs for students with disabilities who are engaged in the foster care systems and the juvenile justice system. Y-TAC provided training to the Missouri VR staff and some community partners on strategies and tools the programs could use or adapt that have been effective in other peer mentoring programs for youth with disabilities. Y-TAC's targeted technical assistance includes various strategies such as learning labs, communities of practice, systems mapping, training workshops, and meeting facilitation. For example, learning labs are one type of professional learning opportunity in which the participants typically come from multiple perspectives or disciplines to share experiential knowledge and innovative practices around a certain topic. In spring 2019, Y-TAC convened professionals from 7 state VR agencies for a learning lab that focused on re-engagement strategies for out-of-school youth with disabilities. A key component of the learning lab is discussing with young people themselves about their lived experiences. As a follow-up to this first learning lab event, Alaska VR requested assistance from Y-TAC in September 2019 to conduct another learning lab for the state to engage their agency staff and other state partners to examine ways that the VR system could better serve runaway and homeless youth with disabilities and youth connected to the foster care system. Y-TAC's universal technical assistance includes online training events, resources, and tools. One example of this is the virtual convening that Y-TAC held in early 2020, which was a 2-day online event on engaging out-of-school and other opportunities in VR services. During the event, VR professionals learned from youth with disabilities and experienced youth service providers about different strategies for connecting with young people who are experiencing barriers to employment. A key theme that was emphasized by both the young people and the providers alike was the importance of meeting youth where they are and focusing on building a trusting relationship. Y-TAC has developed a range of resources, including briefs, guides, and toolkits. These cover a variety of topics, such as strategies for supporting youth in foster care, working with youth connected to the juvenile justice system, and supporting runaway and homeless youth. Other topics have included ethical and cultural considerations for serving youth with disabilities and strategies for building successful partnerships between VR agencies and other workforce professionals. All of the resources and tools, as well as the recorded webinars and events, are available on Y-TAC's website. Now I'm pleased to introduce my colleague, Dr. Kim Osmani, who will talk about the results that we are seeing from Y-TAC's technical assistance activities.
Thank you so much, Mindy. I'm excited to be able to share the results of the work we have done over the last 4.5 years with states. We've been so fortunate to work with such a wide variety of states all across the country who we have seen make significant efforts to serve opportunity youth. A few examples of them are New York and Nevada, Indiana, North Carolina, Alaska, and Oregon. So now I want to share with everybody some of the information about how we have helped support youth service professionals increase their service competencies. And this is demonstrated by the fact that we have really engaged with over 1,600 professionals from vocational rehabilitation as well as other partners to increase their competencies and strategies for effectively serving youth. And that's not just through the YSP-KSA training modules that we've delivered, but all of the professional development activities that we've been able to provide through our National Technical Assistance Center. And one of the examples, as you can see in the first bullet, are the YSP-KSAs that are actually 9 modules that cover an array of topics. We've been able to provide those across the country, and as Mindy mentioned earlier, the Virginia Department of the Blind and Vision Impaired has actually engaged in 5 of those modules in addition to several other topics that we've been able to work with them on. Trauma-informed practices has been something we've been able to provide not only in a universal capacity but also intensively with some of our states. And the third bullet represents an approach out of the San Diego County YMCA called Compassion, Awareness, Acceptance, Validation, and Empowerment, or otherwise known as the CAVE approach. We were able to connect the staff from Michigan Rehabilitation Services with the San Diego County YMCA to train 4 groups across the state. And what it really demonstrated from the feedback we got from participants was really putting people over processes, getting them back to the roots of counseling, and identifying ways that they can be facilitators of success instead of sometimes we're in a position of frustrating some processes because of policies and procedures and red tape. And the next bullet is peer mentoring, which Mindy provided the example of Missouri. And really what's exciting about this is seeing how a state VR agency is reaching out to other systems that maybe it never engaged with before to have true collaboration and start pilot programs where we're making sure that students with disabilities that happen to be in the foster care system or students with disabilities that happen to be in juvenile justice are accessing services that are available to them. So it's exciting to see those things starting to grow at those grassroots level. And then we've had a large demand and real success in trying to build the skills and capacity for VR staff and community rehab providers and other partners out there to understand blindness and vision impairment and tools and strategies for being successful in supporting youth in those areas. And the last bullet that's demonstrated on this slide covers the topic of interagency collaboration, which we have seen across the states that we've been working with. And in particularly, one example I wanted to highlight was that of the state of Arizona and their Rehabilitation Services Administration, their VOC rehab program, who came together with the Department of Child Safety, which is their child welfare or foster care agency, to ensure that students with disabilities that happen to be in the foster care system are accessing pre-employment transition services through the VR agency and possibly full VR services if the need is there. And so they brought together those partners as well as partners from education, from the career and technology education centers, from behavioral health and developmental disability to do some cross-training amongst the agencies. And then from there, they started developing local communities of practice. So their first one was in Tucson, where we pulled together the people from the local offices, from the local school districts, to meet one another, understand who provides what services, and establish some ongoing regular communication so that we can ensure students in those local areas are accessing services. Next, I am going to turn it over to our partner from Boston University, Dr. Scott Solberg, who is amazing. He and his staff there and doing all the evaluation for the technical assistance and training we provide. Scott?
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Asmani. That was great. It's always exciting to be part of this. It's been a really exciting journey. And for my part of it, we want to talk about some evaluation work we've been doing. one of the things that RSA was really interested in early in the project was, can we begin to show some evidence of impact? And so with that in mind, we actually implemented a quasi-experimental strategy specific to the knowledge, skills, and abilities portion to see, are the workshops that we're providing, are the youth service professionals leaving those workshops feeling more confident in their ability to engage in the various different activities that they're being taught. What we're looking at right now on this slide is the pre and post between the level of confidence, what we call self-efficacy, for whether or not the counselors felt able to engage in assessing the kind of career assessments that are needed, the individualized, personalized planning and workforce development that we want them to be able to do. And what makes it unique is we used a quasi-experimental strategy from called a step pre-test, post-test design from Campbell and Stanley back in the early 1960s. It was it's something that few people are using, but it's beginning to gain some momentum. And what it does is it allows us not to use a control group. Instead, we use a comparison group. We actually randomly assign which of the participants would take a pre-test, and then the other half would take the post-test. And because we were doing that kind of random assignment of when they were being observed, right, we can now compare between the pre and post, and we can begin to make causal inferences that the actual workshop, in fact, was the reason why the change occurred. And in this case, the level of self-efficacy in relation to engaging in these practices went up. What you're looking at in this slide, it actually represents 4 states, a combination of 4 states, Iowa, New York, North Carolina, Virginia. And within each of those states, the KSAs were being done at different sites. And so we're actually, even though we're looking at an N of 137 pre and 129 to post, it's multiple areas within each of those 4 states, which means that we were conducting the workshops and we were replicating it in different settings, different kinds of counselors, really different regions, and we found a lot of differences in these different states, depending on which region the counselors are coming from in terms of the challenge they were facing, the different activities they were engaged in. So to see this consistency go up was really exciting. And we do some fancy statistics on it, to say, okay, things are significant. We also find that the effect size is quite large. And so we're feeling really excited about this. This is just a sample based on those 4 states in particular to that specific content, but we actually have it for the final report will be replicated across all of the workshops. And what it allowed us to do at the end of the day for this particular piece was to say, yes, we're feeling confident that the quality of the service being delivered to our counselors is reaching the highest, really the highest impact we can possibly have. We will also talk and showcase some of the modules that were actually improved because of feedback we got. And we can show before, even though we had a pre and post change, we had an even stronger effect once we improved some of the content. This idea of an iterative process to continue really getting the highest impact possible. The other thing we did to assess impact was we wanted to make sure they're putting stuff in practice. And so we actually went back months later. In this case, it was taking a look at 5 months after the training as we interview a number of counselors, and these are just some sample. We've got a lot of different comments, but this is a sample of it. We're really trying to figure out, did you actually use the things that you had been taught during the training? And sure enough, many of the counselors, enough for us to feel confident that this is a good sample that generalizes the larger group. They're involved in it, and they're talking very concrete about things they've taken from the training and are now implementing into practice. So this first person talking about the informal assessment and helping the youth really understand not only what the soft skills are that they have currently, but what is it they need to continue developing. And so that kind of personalized, individualized approach, which was such an important theme in the training. Taking a look at helping the youth feel more comfortable in actually setting goals, right? Putting together some of what we'll call these SMART goals, these specific, measurable, time-limited kinds of things to help them move and start applying themselves differently was exciting. And then there's also a My Vocational Journey activity, so it's a very specific, concrete activity that people are also saying, thank you, this was something I can put right into practice. So I'm gonna stop there, but just in saying that we're really excited about the level of impact things we're having. This is a kind of a sampling of what that's looking like and what we'll be able to present further. But it's just really exciting to see in which the counselors really took to the kinds of content and training that took place. All right, and now back to you, Dr. Aswani.
Thank you so much. It is so exciting to hear about the results, and what excites me even more is the results that we have yet to see that hopefully we'll start to see in the next 3 to 5 years, which is the direct impact on the youth outcomes. Because change can take 3 to 5 years, and so when we talk about building these new partnerships and starting these new innovative practices, we need to see the results of all of these initiatives and all of these partnerships that have developed. So I'm excited to see what the future holds. And that brings me to the next segment that we wanted to talk about, which is how Y-TAC brought together our professionals with youth. Looking at our youth from these underserved populations that oftentimes aren't tapping into the services that are available to them because they don't know them, they don't know about them, they don't have the connections they had when they were in school to these resources. And so, we really, as a National Technical Assistance Center, elevated the voices of these underserved youth with disabilities to strengthen the VR services and the collaboration that exists between agencies to ensure that our youth are getting connected. And 2 examples Mindy mentioned were the virtual convening and the learning lab. And youth had such strong leadership roles in both of these events, and the feedback we got, the evaluations, were overwhelming with support and hearing the stories firsthand from youth and young adults who have these lived experiences. And so on this slide, what you see are a couple of quotes from participants. And so you can see from the quote from the virtual convening is basically demonstrating how important it is for professionals to listen to the youth so that we know, kind of going back to that cave example, we know how best to work with youth by listening to what they want, what they're going to respond best to, while also at the same time we're building relationships, we're building trust. And then from the Learning Lab, which was conducted not only in California but also in Alaska, where you have professionals and youth and young adults together, and they're doing fishbowl conversations, and they're hearing from one another. And basically what we heard from that is we have to include youth when we're planning, when we're developing policy, when we're planning and developing programs for youth, when we're developing marketing materials for youth. We need to include them in all of those processes so that we hear their voice and that they're in a driver's seat, because they're going to tell us what they're attracted to, what they're not, what things are getting in the way of them accessing services or staying engaged with services. So these were 2 fantastic activities that we were able to engage in with many of our states and really elevate that youth voice to help engage or maybe even re-engage some of our opportunity youth in services. The next thing I want to talk about are the partnerships that were able to be developed, and you've heard me talk a lot about the interagency collaborations, and I think that's what's really exciting, and that's something that just gets me going. It gets my adrenaline pumping when I can bring partners together and we can make things happen for youth and young adults with disabilities. But we have truly been able to, not only we talk about increasing competencies and skill levels, but building those relationships, helping agencies build relationships with one another and understand how each other works. And what came out of some of the quotes from the evaluations that we've had, and there's 2 examples here from Arizona is one where they said that from the cross-training that they did, they realized there's a lot of work that's still yet to be done, but this is getting systems talking. It's getting systems working together. They realize how important that is, that everybody comes together working collaboratively on that goal for employment, and that we're leveraging resources, that we're reducing duplication of resources and efforts and services, and that we're continuing to strengthen those partnerships. And I think that's something that Y-TAC has really tried to kind of hold at the helm of what we do, is helping to build that capacity to help scale up those partnerships, help create those partnerships for our underserved youth. And we've seen that in, like I mentioned, the local communities of practice, but also the cross-training and other specific initiatives like the peer mentoring or the learning lab, or specific targeted outreach in the Detroit area of Michigan for youth that are in foster care or juvenile justice or teen parents. And we've just really seen that intentional focus on reaching, engaging, and supporting those hard-to-reach youth, such as those who may have dropped out or those who are experiencing homelessness. And conversations have started. MOUs are in place. Data is being shared between agencies. And so we're just seeing so many new things happening on so many levels, and it's truly exciting for us as a national center, and I think as an industry in terms of vocational rehabilitation. So some of the things that have come out of the evaluations from all of the technical assistance and training that Boston University has helped us gather is what are some of the changes that the agencies are seeing or that our states are seeing in terms of now that they've engaged in these trainings or they've had technical assistance, what are some of the changes that they're implementing? And so, you know, we talked about mobilizing, preparing, and innovating, and that is what we're seeing. We're seeing that on a grand scale for opportunity youth with disability. We are seeing system-wide changes. We see states that are looking at their own existing data systems and realizing they're not capturing what they need to be capturing about the youth that they're serving, or that their systems don't communicate, and how can they change that to make things better so that they can ensure that students and youth are getting the services. They're reaching out to new partners. They are starting to coordinate services better. They're focusing on the local level commitment to change and scaling up across the state. And I just want to mention an example here of one state that truly has been doing some of these things, which is Oklahoma. And they have partnerships with their child welfare agency. They have partnerships with their Office of Juvenile Affairs for students and youth that are in the juvenile justice system. And they are making sure that students and youth with disabilities are accessing either pre-employment transition services or full VR services, and that there are constant connections for those students and youth even after they've exited those systems. And I think I love the quote that is on this slide, and this is from Arizona, from that training that we had done. And they said that I think the professional development helps get the ball rolling for the interagency collaboration. I have developed connections and resources that I didn't have before, and I feel that DCS, that's the Department of Child Safety, has allies now in the other systems of support. So that came from one of the child welfare workers within that agency, and how they now see, like, I have connections, I have resources, there are people, I know who to reach out to. I didn't even know that pre-employment transition services existed, you know, and now I know I can connect my students and youth with these systems. So it's really exciting to see the collaboration, the interest and access to VR, and now that we're going to see these doors opening up for students and youth with disabilities. You know, Mindy covered a wide variety of resources that the Y-TAC has on its website, everything from, you know, universal TA and on. There's several examples there that you can access from our archived webinars to our policy briefs and toolkits. You can access them on the Y-TAC website, which is https://y-tac.org. That's y-tac.org. And there are specific topical type things there for supporting opportunity youth with disabilities, such as around the ethical intersection of culture, transition, disability, mental health, Social Security related resources, youth engagement, and partnerships under the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. And I think what's so exciting when I go back and I visit our website sometime to see everything that we have up there, and I look back at the things we've done and have yet to do, and it makes me so proud of the work that we all do, because regardless of the challenges that we know our state agencies are facing and our schools are facing, you know, the lack of time, the unending paperwork, the large caseloads, we still see these professionals coming to the table and saying, it is important for us to hear youth, and it's important for us to reach out to these youth. And so that, to me, demonstrates the commitment to youth and is just so exciting to see in the work that we do. If you would like more information about Y-TAC or the Institute for Educational Leadership and the work that we do, if you want to be connected with any of the states or you want to sign up for our newsletter, you can visit our website. You can reach us by email at y-tac@iel.org. You can visit our website, sign up for our electronic newsletter, or find us on social media through Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And I just want to thank, I know on behalf of Mindy and Dr. Solberg, you know, we are so thankful for the work that we get to do every day and the work that we get to support all of you in doing and demonstrating our commitment to youth and students with disabilities and those who support them. And ultimately, we really want to thank the Rehabilitation Services Administration at the U.S. Department of Education for their commitment to youth and the professionals who serve them. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you all have a wonderful day. The Y-TAC is a project of the Institute for Educational Leadership supported by the U.S. Department of Education's Rehabilitation Services Administration.